So I'll start to let people in. I'll ask you to go back, and then while I'm letting more people in and managing this bit of it, we can hear your backstory, if that's all right.
Yeah, cool.
Right, here we go. So right then, it's back with Right Along for another session. Welcome Poonam and Matt from KISS, which is amazing to have you live from Leeds. Before we get going, I just wanted to let people know that we've started a partnership with Design Calendar. So if anybody wants to jump on their website, look at their community, they've got a lot of weekly events of their own, such as portfolio crits. They do a lot of global events, sort of a calendar of different things going on across the world. We've also started a YouTube channel, and the link is on the live chat. And if anybody wants to ask any questions to Poonam and Matt, please drop them in and we'll ask them at the end. So while we're just letting people in, guys, can you just take us back to individually to the start of your sort of creative journeys and when design played a part in that, and then just lead us through your careers up until you left London for Leeds?
Yeah. How back do you want us to go?
Well, back as you can remember.
I'll start with me then.
Yeah, go for it.
My introduction into the creative world's been quite interesting because of my South Asian background. But I've, from a young age, been interested in creativity. My mum was a qualified tailor, so she was sewing and creating new garments all the time. So I had that kind of inspiration. I actually thought I might be going into the fashion world. But to be honest, my mum, as many Indian people are, brutally honest. And mum said, I don't think you're going to hack fashion because it's tough. But I was always creative, doing fine art, just always designing and making things at home. And then I got to GCSEs and started to realize, you know what, I'm getting A stars in design. I think this is the career I want to go push for. Now, having to tell your immigrant family that you want to go into design when they expect you to be a doctor or a surgeon or something was interesting, because they didn't know anything about the world. They didn't know if they generally think you're going to be working for pennies on the streets. So that's when I, to be honest, didn't even know about graphic design. I didn't know about the branding world. I just knew that I could, if I'm good at it, I'll be able to make some sort of career. But at the same time, I was always interested in business. I found funny enough, a photo, a drawing of me that I did in year 5. And it's saying, what do you want to be when you're older? And I put businesswoman, which is hilarious. I'll try and find it and share it. So there was those two things always happening. I was always interested in business side. There are family members that have ran businesses, small ones, but I like the idea of the independent. So fast tracked that, did A levels, which included fine art and business and psychology, and then worked my way through Art Foundation and then got to uni. But still, I wasn't aware of branding and the packaging world. And that's when I came across that in second year of university. And I was like, oh, this is insane. Like, I could actually design Coke and Heineken. I can design brands that we engage with every day. It sounded really interesting. I love the brand world. And that's where my sort of career started, with graphic design course at NTU and leaving there. And that's where I met Matt, and I'll let Matt kind of take that on.
Yeah, so, well, I suppose my dad actually used to work at a ad agency in London called Proximity. And so that sort of, the design was kind of always been in the background. It's kind of always been sort of a thing there, and that I've kind of not been a part of, but I've always been aware of. And I suppose as I grew up, it kind of became kind of like an expectation of, oh, I'll probably end up just doing that, really. I suppose there was no sort of clear like vision for it at the time. I think most of us growing up, you're not exactly 100% sure what you're doing. You just kind of go along with the flow. And I think for most of us, we kind of grew up having this expectation, oh, well, let's just go to uni and then go work in London. That was kind of the expectation. And so I ended up just doing my school course, doing an art foundation in Canterbury, and then went to NTU and did graphic design. And again, this is where me and Poonam met. in the first year. We were on the same tutor group, and then we got closer and actually became partners in the third year of uni as well. So from that point, we both we did pretty well in on our courses, didn't we? And we ended up having a few interviews together actually at different companies. We both had an interview at Design Bridge, didn't we? Neither of us got.
Even though we didn't get, it was for the scholarship. So some of the students that are listening in know that Design Bridge does a scholarship where they put out a inquiry to all the universities and they put some of their students forward for it. Funny enough, me and Matt got picked out of NTU, and there was us two and then two others. We didn't get it in the end, but what happened was our time with each other basically made us realize we fancied each other as well,
and also found a bit of synergy as well,
and
in terms
synergy.
Of in terms of values and ideas, and that's kind of where it really started. So that was in second year, and then in third year we ended up working on the the exhibition, all that kind of stuff for the graduates, and we got together there. We both left uni, did internships, the usual run really, and I ended up working at Springits for a number of years, and you had a bit more of a up and down journey, didn't you?
Yeah, I had secured a job before I left uni, but 6 months in I got told to leave because I had challenged the way things were done there. It was a small studio. I challenged that I wasn't getting the guidance and structure as a junior designer, and the founders thought it was a good idea to tell the DD what I was saying. That was a private conversation, and that escalated to me being told she either goes or you. So I was like, all right, off I go. And I genuinely, that was a real hard thing to learn so early on.
6 months into your career, aren't you? Yeah.
You question who you are and your self-worth, that literally someone can pull the rug under your legs at the time. And but I bounced back and managed somehow to freelance at some creative studios with only 6 months of experience. And then I went into internships and went interning at Elmwood and then Bulletproof. And that's where I secured my job from junior to middleweight. But yeah, it was an interesting kind of beginning turn of events, but it made me realize actually the politics involved in agencies, and actually sometimes you can't trust everyone as well.
What was the timelines on that, Poonam, when that happened? Well, for both of you, it would have been the same timelines, wouldn't it?
So when did we graduate?
That would have been end of 2014, yeah.
Yeah, and then I had literally, you graduate in July or something?
Yeah.
Worked 6 months, so end of the year.
End of the year, wasn't it?
And then I had to go back in. I needed some time out for a couple of months just to get my mental health back to, okay, this is might be a bumpy road. And then I interned, and then I think that summer, maybe August, I got my job at Bulletproof, I think.
Yeah, summer, I think it was.
So yeah.
So that wasn't really that long ago then when that happened, from your 6 months at that agency. That's naively of my own, maybe I've just been sort of squirreled away in my own world for so long. But I thought that we'd passed a lot of that, and that sort of didn't really exist, that sort of pulling rank, that idea of, sort of status wins over sort of opinion and thoughts and, processes, which is really sad sort of state of affairs to hear that sort of still going on.
It was a brutal lesson.
It was a brutal lesson.
But it worked out best for you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, funny enough, well, I'd say to a young person listening, it's okay, and there's not stigma. Don't feel like there's stigma around being fired. Basically, it's not a big deal. You just need to learn and reflect from it, and I did. And on reflection, now with having staff myself, I didn't think I actually did anything wrong. I might have just been a bit too honest early and should have maybe just understood where everyone's views were in it, but I didn't do anything wrong. And I think, senior people should listen and say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, let me see how I can make this work, not shit stir. But regardless, I was like, okay, cool. It gave me a thicker skin. And then that allowed, when I interned at Elmwood, I got pally with all the freelancers, and they sent my portfolio to Bulletproof. So that's insane for one thing to happen, and then someone who really likes you sends your work to someone in Bulletproof. You didn't even do it. I had not heard of Bulletproof until then. And that's how then my world was flipped into working for an insanely amazing studio, which has taught me everything I know in order to start my own business. But yeah, so then I went into Bulletproof, and I think I interned for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they offered me a job. Funny enough, the first project I was working on was the Pizza Express, the pizzas that you see in the shop.
Supermarket ones. Yeah.
Supermarket ones. And I was still interning. I wasn't even junior at this point, where the design that I created got put through and chosen by the client. So I was like, well, this is good. I'm obviously doing something right. And I guess I got some brownie points with the senior team members there. And yeah, they accepted me, and I had an amazing, I think 2 and a bit years with them. They realized that I'm curious and I like jumping between packaging and comms. So from working across all the FMCG stuff like Cadbury's and Arla and all of that, to comms being advertising for Coke and Heineken and the other brands they had. They let me dabble in both sides, when a lot of the designers were either comms or packaging. And then I made loads of friends in strategy, and I was curious about that. So I literally became a sponge, and I just absorbed as much as I could. And I think that's another lesson. I think personally, you do need to do some time in a commercial studio, and it doesn't have to be London, but try and go to like a big one, and go to a small one, see what works for you, but absorb as much as you can.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, at the age when getting into these careers, 21, 22, the last thing you want to do at that age is really be pigeonholed into one role for the rest of your life. So, I mean, we were both lucky in that regard, because we managed to explore lots of different areas. I mean, the way Springett's worked at the time, I'm not sure if they still do or not, but the designers did everything. So it was very designer focused business. So there may be one or two account handlers in a 50-man company. So the designers did everything from strategy to innovation, concept work, designing, even some of the artworking as well. So I had a very sort of well fleshed out experience, and even got to speak with clients directly as well. So I was quite fortunate to be, I suppose, taken in by a company like that and learn a lot of the trade, basically. And I know that some people don't necessarily get that experience straight off, but either way, I think it's always worth getting that experience in when you can, even if you're trying it out and realize, actually, some people like to be given what to do on a daily basis and like what they know, and that's fine. But either way, I worked at Springett's, and I had a quite an easy time there in comparison to Poonam, to be honest. I had an easy time, but I'm quite a curious and interested person, so I was constantly asking questions, getting to know the art workers, getting to know the systems and processes in place, which all this ultimately led us to the point where actually we felt we were able to launch out on our own and have everything in place, even in rough form, for us to do our own thing. I had a great time. I worked on some really, really interesting projects, lots of innovation, lots of design, packaging, strategy work as well. So I had a good time. But it kind of got to a point about 3 years in, we sort of started to feel a bit of a block, I think.
Yeah, the rose tinted glasses fell off, you could say.
I think, and I always talk about this of, like, again, as thinking when you grow up, you spend 20 years of your life building up to this point of like career. As a kid, everything's about preparing yourself for a career. For me, it was, I was going to get a job in some sort of agency in London. That was the role of my life up to that point. I got to that point, and after a year or so, I was like, okay, now what? What was this all leading up to? And actually, many people know living in London, I think is a great place to visit, but living in London is a very different experience. Long commutes, everything's hugely expensive. And actually, the way a lot of design agencies run as well is very intense, long working hours. Particularly Poonam had experienced that more than I did. Again, I was quite lucky. And actually, you don't have very much time to actually enjoy the place anyway. Weekends you spend trying to recover from the previous week before diving straight back into Monday. So we just found ourselves on a rat race where we were burnt out, exhausted, and kind of like, well, what's the point in this? What's the end goal here? And there was, and I particularly felt it because there were certain people where I was working who had been doing that job for 30 years plus. And I don't think that's, healthy because it has a knock-on effect on everyone there. There's some people who are just clearly not happy with where they were, and they'd been doing it for 30 years. And I was thinking, I do not want to be in that position in 30 years' time. I do not want to be this person who's hating their work, walking in the same commute for 30 years nonstop, and that be my life, basically. So that's how I felt about it. And it kind of pushed us to a point where, the first thing we thought about actually was, let's have a holiday or a trip at least. And we wanted to go to India.
We thought traveling would be a good idea.
We thought traveling would be the answer.
Let's go a couple of months off, and that will solve all our problems.
And the more we thought about it, and we had this trip planned out, but we just kept putting off pressing the book button. For some reason, it just didn't sit with us. And I think eventually it came to our heads that, well, actually, we'll just be back in square one as soon as we came back the next Monday anyway. So is this really a fix for what we're doing, or is this just like a short getaway and then back to square one? Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think to add, so Matt said that he had it a bit easier than I did. It's just Bulletproof's intense. It's every minute of your time is costed.
It's logged and accounted
for. And so you've got to be, it's called Bulletproof. So you're literally running at 100 miles per hour. And that took a toll on me. Although I felt I could keep on top of it, I started having hormonal issues. I put on weight. I wasn't sleeping properly. There's all of these things, and it wasn't just me. My friends were feeling the same way. So I just thought, I can't. If I keep carrying on, I'm going to break. And that mixed with company politics and just Chinese whispers. I didn't like the fact that you've got about 10 client managers telling you something, and then their interpretation is different from what the client said. It comes to you as a designer, you make that amend, it goes back to the client's like, oh, that's not quite what I was thinking. I'm just like, if I was just allowed to sit in that in that meeting, I'd be able to clock on what you're trying to say.
But isn't that whole process counterintuitive to the creative process?
It is, but I get why it's in place. It's efficiency, and Bulletproof's, and many of the bigger agencies, it's all about, you get to that level and it is about efficient creativity.
And I think we'll probably talk more about that when we get to later in the conversation. But I think it really comes down to what is the purpose of that business. And a lot of the big agencies it is about profit. And it's about how do you maximize efficiency. It's not necessarily about how good is the creative output or how good is the experience or the process. It's about, can you maximize profits and minimize costs?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from.
And I presume when you get to that level of business, that the structure is ultimately what guides that, isn't it? So if you've got shareholders, if it's profit over people or profit over quality, like any sort of business in any industry, that's when you reach that tipping point where it is just a cash cow, isn't it? And it's nothing more.
Exactly. And it works. And I get why some of these businesses are like the way they are. But as a junior and midway, I wanted to speak to clients. I wanted to have that relationship with them. I didn't want to wait until DD creative director role, which is like 8 years down the line. It didn't make sense. And I was far too curious. Like, I'd walk past rooms and people having meetings. I want to know what they're talking about because I was just interested. I wasn't, So a mix of personal things not fitting the small cog in the big wheel kind of scenario going on, and not feeling a connection with the work. That's when we thought, actually, going on holiday isn't the fix. I think we should start our own business. So now we're there in our spare room, like, okay, how do we make this work? And that's when the side hustle kicked in, and I started to reach out to people that I'd seen their brand, like small things. So my first reach out was to Pink Laddu, the Pink Laddu project founder Raj, which you'll see on our website. I loved what that project stood for. It was about female empowerment and equality for women in the South Asian community. Unfortunately, even now, if you're a girl in a South Asian community, you're not seen as equal to a boy, and there's lots of challenges. I'd experienced that even just through my career with my family. So I was like, I just messaged her and said, I love what you stand for. I don't feel like your logo reflects what you are in your message. Do you fancy a chat and me helping you out? And she messaged straight away saying, I bloody hate my logo, so yes, please. And she's actually now become a best friend and sister, really.
She's kind of like an honorary founder in some ways, because that project has helped us open so many doors and kind of build that initial network, really.
But that's another thing, that relationship that we've built, we would have never had that if we were working in someone else's studio. To have that bond and to show our team members you can have a genuine bond with a client as a friend, that completely takes this idea of, oh no, you have to behave a certain way with clients and stuff, and formality. So anyway, we side hustled with her, did her identity, and then Matt's dad had 1 or 2 wedding connections, and we did some identity for them, kind of practice the process, because Bulletproof was so thorough in how they did. I'd learned and filtered what they did, and Matt had learned the account management side, and then both of us are creatives. We could almost create a very raw framework to work within, and all of the clients we worked with were happy with what we were doing, which then gave us the confidence to say, I think we're going to make that move and set up our own studio. And we knew we wanted to get out of London, because partly it would be a pain in the arse to set up a design studio in London, cost.
Also it's a big ocean, a tiny fish in a big ocean with London. And we kind of realized that, well, we don't want to stay in London anyway. We've been there, done that. And, there's plenty of other interesting places across the country that we could have picked from. So we looked at Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, and actually even just one visit to Leeds, we fell in love with the place, didn't we?
Yeah.
So we kicked off KISS in summer 2017. But sort of the February before that was when we were erring about the traveling and actually setting up on our own. But I think we're listening to some, what do you call it? Like, not motivational, was it? Life hack kind of type podcast, all that fad craze that was around at the time. And it just kind of made us realize that, well, we could continue as we are, maybe set up, because from the start, me and Poonam, even at uni, we were like, oh, it'd be great to have our own studio one day. But even in 2017, we're like, actually, we have kind of got everything we need to do it. It's a case of, we could just carry on as we are and keep learning and getting better at our craft and just be even more prepared to do it. Or we could start now and actually go on an even bigger learning curve and see what happens. So I guess there was a degree of risk in it. But at the same time, it's like, well, what is the worst that could happen? If we end up failing, going bust, then we could just, move back to our parents for a couple of months, save up enough again, and then just get another job back in London, start again, basically. So there was never really a huge risk in that sense. So the summer 2017, we both handed in our notices, didn't we? Said, right, let's do it. Get everything planned. We created KISS as our own business. We always knew we wanted to turn it into a studio, so we never intended on freelancing. And handed our notice and set up plans to actually move to Leeds.
What does that? If we go back a little bit to this you're sat in your one bedroom flat, whatever it is in London, connecting with people to do like side hustles whilst traipsing down the tube and through the rain and the cold to studios, and get to then just get blasted every day long and sort of get beaten up about what's going on. What's the actual steps it take then to move to, what is it, 300-400 miles away up the country, away from family, friends? What does that actually look like in a day-to-day sort of scope? Did you just sort of go, sod it, let's go, and we just drove off into the sunset and hope for the best, or was there a bit more of a strategy plan involved in that?
Yeah, there was planning, and I think for the most important thing for us was just lining up a bit of work prior to that. And I'm not talking about months and months worth of work, just enough to keep us going.
So we saved up the 6K, and that's just our personal savings.
I mean, to say that we spent 3 years each in London and all we managed to save was 6,000.
That tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Both of us, yeah.
But yeah, so we had to make sure we had savings. We did some practice runs with some clients. Then we had one or two small projects ready to go. But also, both me and Matt and our connections at Springix and Bulletproof and throughout the creative industry, we told them that we are going to set up our own studio. And I have to say, Bulletproof and the founders and all the senior team and all my mates there were so supportive and said, oh, that's amazing. And the team, certain members sent us some small projects that were too small for...
They were just inquiries, weren't they?
Yeah, they were inquiries.
They weren't clients on a plate. We still had to pitch for, tend for the work and prove that we could do it. So we got just a couple of bits of work from that, along with stuff that from the wedding side that came in, and the bits from the Pink Ladu side.
Yeah. And then we came up, scouted Leeds, said, yeah, this is right, found an apartment where we could work from that, that was good, it's light and airy for us. And then, then we had almost the cogs in place ready to move up.
Yeah, and in terms of making it work, it was a case of minimizing our living expenses as much as possible. So, we were living off initially £200 a month on food. We to be fair, we didn't go for the cheapest flat because we knew it'd be our office. So we knew we'd go for somewhere that would have a lot of light. We knew we'd live in there. So again, but all these things, how can we maximize that initial 6K to go as far as possible? And then as soon as we're in there, we can then, let's try and keep bringing in enough work just to keep topping that up and then grow it from that point.
Yeah. Were there any nerves when going to selecting anywhere outside of London that would have played a part in being a negative thing? I've had personal experience I've told a client where my postcode is, and they've said they don't want my quote. Was there, because they were interested in London quotes only, really? Was there anything, did you feel, because however much it'd be nice if the UK was a bit more shared out, and it's getting that way. The attention is heavily on London, whatever it is, whatever industry or discipline it is. Was there any nerve in stepping away from that, thinking, however much you wanted to break your lifestyle sort of circumstances and your career change, was it a case of, God, we're leaving probably the biggest pot of clients, money, etc., etc.?
I think for us, the pros way outweigh the cons anyway. So my point about, there's more agencies and studios in London than you can count. Leeds, on the other matter, there's a few now. There's quite a few now, but there's not huge amounts. So for starters, it's easier to stand out for a start. But we've never come across any issues of, oh, you're in Leeds, therefore we don't want to work with you.
No, I think
it's never been an issue.
I think our experience tells us all, our portfolio, our work, the clients we worked on, that was enough to sell into new clients, that we knew what we were doing. They didn't really care that we were based in Leeds. Yeah. And just our approach, constant communication with them. We were always down in London anyway, because we had a handful of the clients that we did have, like the Mac factory, who was based in Camden. So we were always back and forth. So we were like, well, we'll come and see you when we're down there. And it just didn't seem to matter. And I genuinely think it doesn't matter now, and will never, especially because of COVID and working from home. We can work virtually, and it's not you don't need to go and see each other all the time. I think just see each other when it's the main parts of the project, but you can make it work wherever you are.
And so I suppose there's a transition from us prepping to get started in Leeds. There's that factor, and then now we're actually in Leeds starting off. There was a case of getting our portfolio together. We spent some time creating some conceptual work to show, you know, what we can do and show that we can do work in the sectors that we want to kind of work for. And then ended up being just a lot of networking, going to events, going to things around Leeds and speaking to people and just trying to get our names out there.
Yeah, even cold calling, which doesn't quite work in the design world.
I think you said something quite interesting there, Matt. I think really important, and I've done it myself, is even though you can set up as a sort of studio, so to speak, and sort of try and show the world that maybe you're a bit bigger than what you are, you know, brand it and et cetera, as opposed to being freelance, still finding work with people you have worked with in the past, or finding jobs that might just be a few £100. They're vitally important when starting out, but can sometimes, I think in our industry, can be frowned upon, or people might look at it as it being a bit lower quality than anybody else. But how important having any form of income, like you say, reducing outgoings but increasing income, is so important when just finding your feet.
Yeah, and to build on that, the experience of doing it as well. You know, me and Poonam had maybe about 3 years total experience in London. You know, yes, we're high performers and being very active and try and learn and do as much as we can. But, you know, we're not these individuals who set up agencies after 20 years of being a creative director. You know, we are still fairly green to the world, and particularly to the business world. So the whole activity was highly learning. Every day was a learning curve, and every project, every action, every interaction with the client was an opportunity just to learn how to manage and deal with things and create new ideas. You know, it is a huge J curve. So yeah, at that point, you know, you don't turn away work, really. You just get on with it and take what you can get. I think me and Poonam were, I think particularly Poonam's got is out of the pair of us, Poonam is the one with the vision. She's the one with the big view on how things should be and how things could be, and she's always had a very strong idea of where we need to go and what we need to do. And I'm more of the support, let's say. You know, if any gamers out there, Poonam's the DPS, I'm the healer tank, you know, if anyone gets those references. Basically, we from the start, we've always tried to show ourselves as being bigger and better than maybe we were to begin with. But, you know, you have to fake it till you make it, and you get to that point. And now, you know, we look back at some of our work now and think, oh, cringe. And always totally, you know, trying to sound like someone's got that reference. There you go. Just constantly pushing to get that, and we're always trying to produce work of that next standard, of that next level. And luckily, it's brought us to the point where the kind of work that we do get in, even now, is highly creative. It's interesting. It's not run of the mill. It's not boring. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah. I think to add to that, even early on, we were getting really interesting projects. And I think how we positioned ourselves, how we talked about KISS, we weren't working on boring work. Most of the time it was really interesting. It's just the pay, you know, how much we were getting paid for it slowly increase as we developed our process. So we took smaller projects on with startups and stuff, and then worked our way up. But not only was networking important, and this is where connections are. Business is a people's game and a connection game. It's not necessarily just about talent. And I noticed when we were networking, so I leveraged all my connections within the creative industry in London, Bulletproof, Spring It, spoke to everyone, let everyone know what we're doing. Then second to that was when we were networking, we were speaking to everyone, and I've started to realize that there are certain people, accountants, lawyers, senior people, there's Asda's HQ here, senior people there that we started engaging with, who know lots and lots of other people. So I was like, okay, so if I get to know these kind of people, they'll then, PR people, they'll then recommend us, and it almost spirals out.
And to be fair, this is something that Poonam's also extremely good at, is just being nice. Well, I think we are, to be fair, our clients do enjoy speaking to us because we maybe not today, but our energy level is usually quite high and bouncy. So people enjoy engaging with us, and I think that's just fundamental. I think people want to work with the people that they get on with and enjoy and have a good time with, and are optimistic with. If people are difficult or a pain in the ass to work with, then they just won't work with you again. So just being nice, being friendly, just speaking to people, and just
so those
nice
connections and being just interested in their world, and then you start throwing favors at each other, and that's part of a business strategy. And then the third thing for me was finding mentors. So I asked one of the MD of Bulletproof to be my mentor at the beginning. I also asked if I could check in with Jonathan Sands, the founder of Elmwood, or one of the founders. He's now runs Born Ugly. And then I also reached out to other senior people and just checked in with them when I was stuck in the business. I didn't know quite what, we had a challenging conversation with an inquiry or part of the project. I had people who've done it, and I could reach out and say, I'm stuck, can you help? And they were happy to help and give some guidance.
That's really, really important, that networking concept. And I've thought this through so many times, myself and with other people that I know. Like the idea that creative people aren't necessarily very networky type, because it's deemed to be a corporate thing, isn't it? It's very much the ones that I've been to, it's like double glazing salesmen selling you, constantly trying to sell you stuff or throw business cards down your throat. I think for me, I've always sort of tried to look at it like you're building long-term friendships. Really, you try, it goes beyond selling products or services. It's you ask them how their family is, or you sort of what did they do at the weekend. Very simple sort of interactive, humane things that we like to do. I think if people can see it much more like that, I think they go a long way, because it's something that I find a lot of creative people just avoid at all costs.
Yeah, and I think it's that long-term mindset, I suppose, and a lot of over the past 4 years, we've invested so much time and energy into projects, people, conversations, and knowing and just believing in the fact that it will pay off at some point. A conversation with someone may not pay off for years and years and years, and all of a sudden, something out of the blue, someone will contact you and say, "Oh, I was recommended by X," or so on. These sort of things happen all the time and are vital to building a studio. So it's just always reminding ourselves of, if we do a little bit extra now, then the reward will come maybe later on, and just dealing with that fact.
You ever sort of win at business, do you? There's never an end point where you just go, right, I've completed it. It's not like playing Sonic or something. There's we're always just organically trying to, it's not always just about growth, because I think sometimes we get told that's the only way to gauge success, isn't it? By you being 10,000 people in a studio or churning over millions and millions. It's you've got to find your own version of success, but it just always keeps on going, doesn't it? Your clients come and go, and contacts come and go, but they'll return one day, or they move to a new position. And having that, that idea that they return is really rewarding, because it feels like you've done something good in the first place.
So I think it's my train of thought's just gone, actually.
Well, on that though, I have felt intimidated, especially with the growth hacking and all of that going on, and startup success that is covered in LinkedIn and Instagram. I was like, oh shoot, in 3 years we should have a certain amount of people by now, or we should have a certain amount of pillar clients. And I have to constantly remind myself, just like as every individual has their own pace, we have our own pace, and we might get that success within the next couple of years. I need to take a step back and stop comparing to other studios or other businesses that are not even designed, and just remind myself that we've got our strategy in place, we know what we're doing, and we're taking it as it comes, and not forcing growth when it doesn't need to happen.
It is one of the hardest things to try to manage, I suppose, mentally. Especially when you see, we've been in the game 4 years, and we've done a lot of learning and a lot of trialing and testing, and things are going in the right direction. But then as soon as you see, you know, a new startup agency come out the blue that's got 4 founders from ex-creative directors and account directors of, you know, top agencies, and bam, they've got, you know, 20 people in their studio, like, within 6 months.
Yeah, they've got Nike on their roster. You're like, shit.
It can be a bit like, oh, for goodness sake, like, but we have to remind ourselves that, you know, they kind of have already done the legwork, because they've already done 20 years of work and stuff leading up to that point and all that kind of stuff. And everyone has their own journey of getting to these places, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you set your own boundaries, I think that's the problem, isn't it? A lot of the time, maybe it's built on like the first thing on the sheet when you sort of say, what do we want to achieve? And it's money, or it's, you know, it's growth or whatever. And I sometimes think that that's you sort of setting yourself for a fall immediately, aren't you? For me, I think for a lot of the people I look up to and respect, it's more about happiness or change or, you know, education or whatever it was, you know, things that are done for good, you know, for the wider good of the world, which I think that sort of comes from a better place. And, you know, it's a personal thing, isn't it? But that brings me on actually to like what you guys, when I look at your site and the show reel, I think that's probably the best show reel I've ever seen, because it's not just loads of work floating around looking fancy. It's built on a solid sort of ethos. So in your, I'm really interested to know about from the time you set up in, was it summer 2017 to where we are now, and obviously quite a big gap in there that's just been lost to nothing. Have you worked in that time? Did you work on what you wanted to stand for? Because I know that in there's a lot about disrupting challengers, modern day pirates. You know, there's a lot more activist sort of driven sort of type approach to it. So that's something you both sat down and sort of said, this is what we want to stand for. Did that happen naturally?
Yeah, I mean, we were called KISS, which was, KISS stands for Keep It Simple Stupid. So the idea was that we wanted to keep the process and how we speak to our clients, how we run the business simple and not fussy, and cutting out all the bullshit. So we knew that all this amazing experience we had in London, we wanted to filter and almost purify it to the main components. And then that would mean we'd have better relationships with clients, better relationship with us in the creative work.
Yeah, and which also leads on to basically Pink Ladder was the first I suppose non-profit social enterprise that we worked with, and you know, a project like that's extremely fulfilling. And so that kind of became like a fundamental pillar of us as a studio. We always got some sort of pro bono client on the roster. And there's a variety of reasons why I think that's so important. First of all, they're often always the most creative projects. Secondly, they're amazingly fulfilling. You know, you know, how often does our day-to-day work actually contribute and actually pay off and help some people of in some form? And also it's a fresh, it's a new perspective. It also keeps the creative process interesting and just keeps us going in terms of like, you know, this project isn't just about filling pockets, it's about doing something good and exciting and putting it out there into the world. So throughout, we've continuously worked with the activist lawyer, for example, Zenat. There's Pink Laddu, which has springed out loads of different things. We've had the stories for South Asian Supergirls book, and even when it comes to particular like food packaging, food brands that we worked with, you know, we really love working with the more vegan stuff, the stuff that's a bit more eco-friendly, more healthy stuff. You know, to be fair, I have no interest of working on brands like Coke or M&M's ever again, personally. But the KISS has enabled us to have that choice of freedom, enable us to, you know, I don't want to work on anything that's putting shit out there into the world, but if it's making some sort of difference to someone's life or improving it, or just having a better day, for example, is enough. And it just makes what we're doing, I suppose, that little bit more fulfilling and a little bit more exciting.
Yeah. So that human approach first has transcended into the studio, how we run the studio as well. I remember in our previous experience, I always felt nervous saying I have a doctor's appointment, or that I need some time out, or even go for a cup of tea. I was like, shit, I'm going to be told I have to come back to my desk. And I just wanted, and I've said this to our team, if you are feeling a bit poorly or you need to go to the bank to sort something out, do it. Like, just make up your time at at some point throughout the week or the day. I just wanted an environment where we felt relaxed, we can support each other, we didn't have to tell each other where we are all the time. And the same with the clients. It's a friendship with the clients. We're professional as well, but we have a friendship where we are looking out for each other and helping each other, and not just, you know, having this kind of weird wall between each other, and where we have to look professional, we have to wear a tie. And, you know, I've heard some awful stories of certain studios saying you have to dress a certain way for client meetings.
Was it heels? Wasn't we heard one that heels are
The girls have
mandatory
to wear
in client
heels
meetings?
and, yeah, just all this crap that
Is it the 1960s? Is it?
that I wanted to break down and stop, because I don't think it's healthy. And I think also being millennials, and we're a team of millennials and Gen Zs now, business is changing. It's not, this formality is going, and I think that's the way forward now. We should be able to have a bit more of a level discussion with everyone in the team, and the hierarchy and all this crap that comes with it. I do think hierarchy is there for in certain situations, but my God, you don't need a hierarchy of 100.
No, but what I find fascinating is that you can use your creative thought process, to what your natural skills and abilities and calling, so to speak. But yeah, you can use that not only just to create an agency, a business that makes money to pay staff and to, you know, to lead a normal lifestyle, not to pay a mortgage, etc. But you can use that creative thinking to change the way that business is done. I think that's really interesting, how we can, you know, underline what we do. So from the outside to a client, it's somewhere that produces nice branding and websites and all the rest of it. But from the way that it's structured, and the way that you implement, and the way that you say you talk to team and all the rest of it, that's still using creativity. Because I think that when I look at some of the older fashioned, especially London agencies or big city agencies across the world, they're still built on a very much old traditional business model, aren't they? And that's why the suit sort of mentality and what people should wear and what they should say and what they should do is still ever present, because that's what has always been done by the people that they followed. And I think now, you know, there's an opportunity for all of us, especially your generation, to sort of really rip that up, completely change that. So not just sort of talk about challenging towards clients and brands and sort of saying how you do things differently, but do it differently ourselves, so that in future, more generations will then think, oh, we can push that even further and change that even more, and that will just become a complete norm.
Creativity is team effort, right? And we are literally working with each other for 8-9 hours a day. Why would you put such a formal structure and fear into your team to perform? It doesn't make sense.
And this is where it comes down to, and to be fair, I do say this to interns and people that we engage with. Look at the founders and the owners of a business. If you're looking for a job, look and see what drives the CEO, what drives the founder or the MD, because it will define the culture of that space. If that CEO is using the business as a cash cow, then the culture will behave as such. However, you tend to find if a business is more built around maybe building a good culture, or building a good lifestyle, or just being excellent at work, at the craft or what they produce, then the culture also reflects that. So, and I do think that particularly in the past, we've all been, when looking for a job, it is a two-way process. You need to see does that person at the top connect with us? And we're the same with us when we're looking at clients as well. We've come across businesses actually where
we don't like what
we don't like the founders, we don't like the CEO, and actually that's big red flags for us, because we know that A, they may not value what we do anyway. B, the process itself may not be enjoyable, regardless of whether it's high paid or not. And actually, ultimately, what does that leave us at the end of it? You know, does that mean that we're burnt out, hating the project and the work at the end of the day, just for an extra bit of cash? Is that worth it? Probably not.
Not from, yeah.
So I suppose for us, we do see this KISS as more of a lifestyle business in that sense, in the sense of we want to enjoy our lives doing it. This isn't about rinsing every penny to then do other stuff in another life. It is about how can we make this studio as enjoyable as possible? How can we make the projects that we work on as enjoyable as possible? You know, all the while trying to balance making it profitable, of course, you know, because we can't run it at a deficit. So it's a challenge, and it's something that we're still trying to work out. You know, we're still in early days, and so it's a constant balance. But we know as a vision, enjoying our work is the most important thing.
Yeah, I suppose everyone's probably wondering, well, we've networked with a load of people, now what? And that's when we got lots of introductions and recommendations, and we actually got a few pitch work. And I know some people feel one way about pitches, but as a small studio where we didn't have at the time lots and lots of work, doing a freebie worked in our favor, and it unlocked a ton of work for us.
So I suppose prior to that, it's a case of, for us, is putting good work out there. It's simple as that, really. And that involved creating concepts ourselves, doing the work that we did have to the best of our ability, putting work out there, online publications, putting it under people's noses. And just from that point, even our website and our video, for example, that's the vision of, again, Poonam, that video. And it captures the attention of a lot of people, and people love it. They engage with it. They connect with the story of it. So again, it's just putting good work out, getting it out there, and often, it gets under the right people's noses, and eventually they'll get in contact.
Yeah.
Which is how we ended up then pitching for certain projects.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said. Sorry, Matt. There's a lot to be said about sort of doing free pitches or committing to work where you got to invest your own time in it. And there's a lot of, I think, social media plays a lot of part in this toxic idea that nobody should do that, or we're all too good to do that. But the fact is, when you're starting out, or even whatever stage you're at, sometimes you just need a cash injection. Sometimes you've got liabilities in other places, and you need to sort of cover those. It shouldn't be a case of blanket this idea that if you're just starting out and you're 20, 21, 22, you should stand up and sort of say, I'm not doing that, I deserve to be paid before I do it. It's just not the reality, is it? You've got to go with what's good for you at the time.
I think it's about picking your battles wisely. Obviously, if we did every single pitch, it just wouldn't be possible, However, there are certain opportunities, and this is about that investment mindset. It's knowing that the work that we put in now will pay off later, and along with picking your battles wisely. So, for example, one of our pillar clients, Vestint, who have two huge mixed-use placement developments, one in Stratford, one in London, and then there'll be one in Cardiff as well. And
you mean in Leeds?
Leeds, London, and Cardiff. Sorry. And we were asked to pitch for the Leeds site to create the identity for the Leeds site. And there's a 2-round process. First of all was a meet and greet where we just show our creds, talk about us and how our relationships could potentially work. And then the picked ones would then go through to a creative pitch. And whoever obviously won that would win it. And we were asked to pitch to do the creative pitch along with one other agency. In fact, one huge agency that's like the go-to for placemaking, ironically.
Like 20 years old, longer.
Yeah, I won't name names, but you might be able to find them. And we pitched against them, and we ended up winning the pitch. Because we brought a lot more creativity, a lot more personality, a lot more a personal approach, and actually spoke to people, and they loved what we did, and we ended up winning that project. The irony is that literally the night before, it was kind of an up to the line kind of night before. And I remember I was supposed to sitting on the bed just thinking, why are we doing it? Pitches should be paid for, blah, blah, blah. But we did it, we won it, and it's been fundamental to changing KISS and turning us from a 2-person team in our bedroom flat and into a studio with team members and so on. That's helped us launch into picking up bigger work and so on and so forth. So had we not done it because of us being stubborn about not doing free work, then we would never have got to that point. So it's picking those battles wisely, and it's worked out for us.
Amazing. Well, I just noticed the time. That's excuse me. That's 54 minutes gone within a click of her fingers. I really appreciate it. I generally think that you guys are the model is like an agency of tomorrow for me. It's very easy. Some of the people that we spoke to, excuse me, on these talks where we have some of the bigger, well-known agencies, and however great they are, and however big the clients are, and all that sort of stuff that we get fed, that's what we should aspire to. I think there's a real cultural sort of shift in that, and that seems to be like the privy of London and the rest of the country's working with, working in ways that they want to work in, whatever suits them personally, and whatever their morals or their ethos is. So, but I think like what you guys are doing really stands out as something I think a lot of people should be watching and following, because I think for the younger generation, people that are just stepping in, students, grads, and early stage pros, should be looking at your approach and the way that you're doing it as sort of a model to sort of follow. I think so. Fair play to you. I think it's going about it the right way. So, if anybody wants to follow you guys online, what's the best place for them to check you out?
So our KISS social, so it'll be KISS_branding, and LinkedIn. Just find KISS branding on LinkedIn, and then our website, which is www.kissbranding.co.uk. We actually are having a new website, so a lot of the stuff you guys will see if you go on it is old now, and there's a shit ton of work basically coming. So just keep a lookout.
It's just the nature of being busy running a studio is that we've been busy working on client work for 2 years that we've not actually had a chance to update
our stuff.
So there's KISS 2.0 going live by the end of the summer at least.
Anyone only ever looks at Instagram anyway, so don't bother. That's just the way it seems to be.